everyone, and welcome to Words Unbound. I'm your host, Hillevi Segerson, and welcome to the show. Let's begin with this episode's news. On November 12th, The Guardian reported that Florida's Department of Education has released a list of more than 700 books that were removed or discontinued from schools across the state after challenges to a state law last year that allows parents and residents to challenge the content of library books. This list was enabled by House Bill 1069, requiring school districts to set up a mechanism for parents to object to anything they consider pornographic or inappropriate. An estimated 33 out of 70 public school districts in Florida have banned books, according to spokesperson Sydney Booker of Florida's Department of Education. Once again, far-left activists are pushing the book ban hoax on Floridians. The better question is, why do these activists continue to fight to expose children to sexually explicit materials? Despite efforts from groups like Florida Freedom to Read Project trying to change this new status quo, commonly banned books such as All Boys Aren't Blue and Genderqueer are being pulled from the shelves along with literary staples such as Slaughterhouse-Five, The Handmaid's Tale, and I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Similarly, PEN America has reported a 200% rise in book bans from the previous year. According to Banned in the USA, beyond the shelves, 43% of book ban cases, or 4,295 bans, were books completely prohibited from access, neither pending a review nor available with newly imposed restrictions. Books completely removed from access were 16 percentage points higher this year, 43%, compared to the prior years, 27%. Along with this, Sabrina Baeda, manager for the Freedom to Read program, noted the alarming numbers still do not capture the magnitude of soft censorship that is coursed through public schools. She said, "Book banning is only one part of the larger story in public education. Every day we are seeing reports of author visits and book fairs canceled, libraries shuttered for excessive book reviews, and heightened scrutiny and intimidation of teachers and librarians. This soft censorship can be subtle and harder to track, such as when books are deliberately weeded from libraries because of their content. Our book ban data is a bellwether of this broader climate. For more information and statistics, check out the PEN America and ALA websites." Welcome back to Words Unbound. On our show today, we have Tammy DePasquale, the Assistant Director of the Eldridge Public Library in Chatham. Now, I've known you for a long time. I attended the Eldridge Public Library's baby yoga program as an infant in the mid-2000s and grew up listening to children's story time. I've also been a junior friend volunteer for quite a while, but I don't know too much about you. Tell me a little bit about your personal and professional background.
Okay. Well, first, I want to say thank you for having me, and thank you so much for bringing this topic to your podcast audience. As you know, it's something that I'm very passionate about. So, yes, a little bit about me. I've been married for 42 years to my college sweetheart. When we first got married, we lived in Arizona. Our daughter was born out there, and we were missing the East Coast and missing family. So we moved back, and we raised 3 children. Now they're all adults, and we have 2 grandchildren. And that's the personal side of me. Mm-hmm. The professional side is I'm a librarian, and a book lover at heart. And this is what brings me here. And I'm happy to be here.
Did you grow up on Cape?
I split my childhood between upstate New York and Chatham, actually. Mm-hmm. A little side note, I got my library card at the Eldridge Public Library when I was 5 years old. Fast forward, never did I think that this would be my home, my professional home. So it's pretty special to me to know that that's where I started my love of libraries.
And also, you mentioned that you married your college sweetheart. Where did you go to college?
So I did my undergrad at Springfield College. I was an education and English major. and was a preschool teacher out in Arizona and here on the Cape. But I was so drawn to the books. I wanted to do more with the books. I wanted to spend more time with the books. So I thought, well, maybe I should look at publishing in children's and young adult literature. So I applied to the Center for the Study of Children's Literature at Simmons College. It was then Simmons College. Now it's Simmons University. And I earned my master's in children's and young adult literature. Had a great couple gigs in publishing and loved it. Had the great fortune to review for the Hornbook Guide. But I missed the children. I missed them so much. So it's one of those things, be careful what you wish for. Mm-hmm. I found an ad for a public librarian, a youth services librarian in Whitman, Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. Though I do not have a library degree, did not have it at the time either. I said, what the heck, I'm gonna apply. They hired me. And my love affair began. It was the perfect marriage between my passion for books and reading and my sheer enjoyment of young people. It was just the perfect match for me. So I worked in Whitman, commuted from Chatham for a while, and then here comes another library job in Chatham at the Eldridge Public Library right up the street from my home. And I applied and they hired me. So that was 22 years ago. So my anniversary date is actually December 16th this year. I'll be 22 years.
Happy early anniversary.
Right? 22 years at the Eldridge Public Library.
Do you still live in Chatham now?
I do. The
issue of book censorship has been a topic I've been aware of for a couple years now. But you were the first person to help me really understand the consequences of what book censorship can bring. What originally alerted you to this issue?
So let's see, it was February 2022, I think. I was listening to the television, watching the nightly news, and here comes a story about the McGinn County School Board, and this is in Tennessee, and they voted unanimously to remove Art Spiegelman's book, Mouse. It's a graphic memoir, Pulitzer Prize-winning memoir. They voted to remove it from the 8th grade curriculum. It is a graphic memoir, graphic novel format about his father's experience in Poland during the Holocaust. It was removed for reasons they claim of nudity, language, and violence. It struck me as just, I was blindsided. Never did I think such a book would be removed and done so unanimously. And you could just kind of feel this little hum of a movement happening. There were things cropping up in the news, things coming across listservs. People were starting to talk about it more, and you could see this awful thing gurgling and bubbling under the surface, and then it was everywhere. So I spoke with my director, was concerned about what was happening in the news. And we had a couple of people come in and ask my thoughts on it. And I said, I think we need to write an article in the Chronicle, our local newspaper. And it's something that I do every month, that I have to write an article for the library. So this was a perfect way to talk about it. Let's have a conversation about it. Let's get ahead of what's, happening. And I thought it was important that we got out there and stated our position on bans and challenges and censorship in general. So I wrote the article, gave some background information, the difference between a ban and a challenge, and what that means. And then invited the public, our patrons, our community members, anyone that wanted to come in, read Mouse, and talk about it. The only thing that I was hoping for was a real candid conversation, but also a respectful exchange of ideas. I did not know where people were coming from. Were we going to have people that, were for banning this book? Were we going to have people that wanted to defend this book? You just don't know. And I didn't know even if anyone would show up, if it mattered to anyone. To my grand surprise, we had a high number of registrants. I received a lot of emails from people who couldn't attend the program but wanted to be in the loop. I thought it was a one-and-done program. I thought we'd just have this great conversation about ban and challenging, and we'd be moving on after that. Little did I think. I still can't believe that 2.5 years later, we are where we are. In this country, talking about the number of bans and number of challenges facing libraries and librarians. I'm completely gobsmacked by this. I don't understand it. But that one and done banned and challenged book discussion is now in its, but we met for the first time in April of 2022. So here we are, and we're still meeting monthly. It continues to grow. We have new people every month. And it's been an absolute pleasure for my reading heart. I set it up for adults for the main reason because it's the adults that are doing the challenging, and it's also the adults that are, championing our right to read. So I felt that, we needed to talk about these books as adults.
You told me about a book, Entangle Makes Three.
Yes.
And you told me about a memory that you had with that. Do you want to expand a little bit about
Was this when I was at another library?
Yes.
Okay. So, I think I should back up a little bit and say banning and challenging books. It's been around for a very long time in the United States. In fact, it goes back to the 1600s. I think it was actually Thomas Morton's book. And the Puritans had a real problem with it. So they not only banned the book, but they banned him as well. They exiled him because they didn't quite agree with what he had to say. So it's been around, and it's popped up here and there over the years, but never have we seen it like it is today. Yeah. This would have been back in 2000 that there was a particular patron that had a problem with this picture book based on a true story. And it would be checked out and not returned. And then, the bill would go out, but the bill was never paid. So I replaced the book, and then all of a sudden it'd go missing again. So then I would put 2 on the shelf, and they would go missing. And it was my dime. I didn't want the library to have that burden, that financial burden. It was more of a statement for me to say, no, you don't have the right to remove this book. And that goes back to I believe, 2000. So that book was on the shelf then, and it remained on the shelf while I was there. And it just was something I was passionate about way back then. It's funny, when it came out, I just thought it was a great story, a story about it takes a village to raise a little one. Mm-hmm. And it's gone in many different directions from there.
In this book group, what are some of the most memorable books you have read and that have sparked the most interesting discussions?
I would say that everyone that we've read has been unique and memorable, and it strikes a chord with different people. You never know what the reactions are going to be. Of course, we waited a little bit before we read Genderqueer. We wanted to be a little comfortable with everybody, because one of the things I said is, if there's any topic that you're uncomfortable with, please feel free not to participate, or just, let me know. And the group was lovely. Everything was on the table. Everything. There is nothing that we cannot talk about, and talk about in such a respectful way. I was not sure. Genderqueer is always the number one banned and challenged book in the country. And this group, and let me just say, it's men, women, all ages, different backgrounds, different reading interests. Some people have never read a graphic novel. I wasn't sure where the conversation was going to go. Mm-hmm. And the response, I just sat there listening to the conversation and the discussion, the back and forth, conversation of this book. What came out of that was a real respect for the reader and the need to keep this book on the shelf, that it may not be for everyone, but there is a reader out there that needs this book. And isn't that what we're about as a public library, making sure that there's a book on the shelf for everyone?
The first time I went to you asking for resources, you told me that parents could decide what their children could check out, but that other parents don't get to decide what other kids get to read.
So a little bit about the misinformation that seems to be out there is that it's, the librarians against the parental rights group.
Yeah.
Let me assure you, I have never met a youth services librarian that isn't all about parental rights. And when I say that, that means you as a parent, as a guardian of a young person or a teen, you have every right to decide what is okay for your young person to read. That is your decision. That I could never, ever interfere with that. That is your right as a parent. What you don't have a right to do is decide what is okay for another parent or guardian's child. And that's where we draw the line. Everyone should have the right to read what they want and the right to access what they want. We should not tell anyone what they can or cannot read.
My last question. Although media concerning book censorship tends to surround southern states, you and I know that the issue is much closer to us than many people realize. What are some things that our listeners can do or be more aware of to protect our freedoms to read?
So I think it's important, first of all, to be informed. Know that the statistics right now are truly alarming. The American Library Association publishes a State of the Libraries every year, and there's statistics that come out about the number of books that have been banned. And what's interesting is, as a librarian, we're supposed to report when there's a formal challenge against a book. We're supposed to report that to the American Library Association because they do track it. The sad part is that the numbers that they have, they don't think reflect the actual numbers of bans and challenges because not everyone does go so far as to report. So the numbers are alarming. The 2023 numbers that came out, I think there were 4,240 titles, unique titles that were banned or challenged. Now that is 65% more than the year before that. That's alarming, and that's something we all need to know. This impacts everyone. As far as what to do, again, my first thing is to be informed. The second thing, read the books. When someone talks about genderqueer, talks about another book that is in the news or on all these lists, know the books. A lot of what happens is these books get on the list and they haven't even been read. It's mind-boggling for me. Talk about the books with the librarians, your family, your neighbor, anyone that wants to talk about this topic. Be informed, talk about it. Look at the American Library's Library Bill of Rights and their freedom to read statement. It really defends your right to read, your First Amendment right. Visit their site. They have a great initiative called Unite Against Book Bans. As well as the Office for Intellectual Freedom. Those are two great websites that have a lot of information. You can get news alerts when things are happening across the country regarding book bans and censorship issues. Join a banned book group. Come, let me know if you're interested in coming to Chatham's Banned and Challenge book discussion. Attend meetings. If there's something going on, if there's a board meeting, a school board meeting, or a library board meeting that you can attend and you can defend those books and those librarians and those libraries, do so. Do not be intimidated by the protest performers. Just be an advocate. It's very, very important that we defend our books, defend our reading, because there's such power in that. When I was at Simmons, we would often talk about books being windows, doors, and mirrors. And a window being you can read this book and you can look into another world. You don't have to experience it. You don't have to cross over into that world, but you're in the safe space of your reading environment and you can learn something or experience something at a little bit of a distance. That's your window. Then you've got your doorway, and you can walk through that door and you can read this book and experience what's happening in the book. I remember moments in books that were so vivid to me, still so vivid to me, that I could never experience. Moments in history, moments with people that, I've never met before. Those are the doorways. And then we have the mirrors, where we look at a book or reading a book and we see ourselves. And that's so important because that helps us learn who we are or, kind of flesh out. I mean, we all still, it doesn't matter how old you are, you're still trying to figure out, where do I fit in? Who am I? Those words, those stories have power and they're so important. And we should never, ever, ever silence those stories. And I'm very passionate about that.
I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I remember, so the summer reading program was one of the things that helped me really come to accept myself and who I am and find myself. Because one summer we had it was like, read a book that's on display. And I forget who was the children's librarian at the time. It was between when Megan and Leo were hired, and I think Sam was there as well.
So yeah, that was prior to that. If Sam was still there, it was prior to them.
And it was a book called We Are Okay by Nina LeCoeur, I believe.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I had read a book about like an LGBTQ person or about schizophrenia, or like, it was just so new to me. But being able to see that in such a humanized light helped me realize that this was just a completely normal facet of of human nature. And I think that's something that's really scary to me about book bans, is that, you can't just sweep an issue under the rug. It'll just get bigger and bigger.
Right. And it's an opportunity to connect. It's an opportunity to know that you're not alone. And I think, how important is that, to just feel like you are a part of something? And we all want to feel connected. We all want to feel like we belong. And those books are out there, and there should be a book for everyone, like the book that you mentioned. It should be there. So I'm glad you shared that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you so much for being my first guest.
My pleasure.
Oh, it was so nice to have you. I'll see you next week.